They're dead, Dave.
What, Captain Hollister?
Everybody's dead, Dave.
What, Todd Hunter? What, Selby? Not Jen.
He's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Hello, welcome back to Everybody is Dead Dave, the Red Dwarf review podcast, where we look at every episode, work our way through them, myself and my other regular co-host, Adam Martyn, the relative newbie.
The relative newbie, yeah. We're going to milk this phrase for all this. It's been a year.
We have a merch store. We
do.
Should definitely get t-shirts with relative newbie on the merch store.
Relative newbie, this scene's too long, all the regular catchphrases we end up having on this show.
Absolutely. But as well as us two, we also have some occasional guest reviewers with us. And today we've got Dan Johnson. Hello, Dan.
Hey. Hello, Dan.
Hello. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here.
You are a YouTuber. You've got your own a YouTube channel, which is DAJ Studios, I believe it's called.
It's so when I was younger, I used to call myself DAJ Studios, but it was always Dan Johnson because I didn't know how to change my name to just one word. And there was a weird law, like a YouTube issue about that. So it's just Dan Johnson, but on Twitter, Instagram, and stuff, it's at DAJ Studios, or at DAJ Studios 6 if the initial one is taken. Gotcha,
understood. And what kind of things do you do on there?
So a whole plethora of stuff. So I do sort of reviews of products, so steelbooks and collections, but I'm also working on slightly bigger projects and kind of broadening my horizons a little bit at the minute with, I've got a vlog that I'm working on currently, but I've also got an audio series, which is probably the biggest thing that I'm doing at the minute.
And a lot of that's Doctor Who related, isn't it? Which obviously me and Adam are also fans of.
Yes, yeah, all of it is Doctor Who related currently, but there's a little project that isn't, but I don't know if that's going to actually become anything in the future.
Interesting. Look forward to that. Well, what's your history with Red Dwarf then? Because I'm always feeling quite old on this podcast. Adam's 10 years younger than me, but I think you even surpassed that. How old are you at the moment?
I'm 20 years old.
Hey, what a good age.
I believe I'm the youngest you've had on.
Very possibly, actually.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's
possibly.
Yeah, I think you're right. So when did you first encounter Red Dwarf?
Okay, so I can't tell you exactly, but I did watch bits of it when I was fairly a little bit younger, maybe 15. On Dave, just repeats and things like that, and I saw maybe bits of the Dave series when it returned, and because of its connection to sci-fi, I thought this would be quite good for me. But I didn't actually start watching it properly until maybe 2020, and then I got up to series 7, and at that point I had a bit of a hiatus, and then once you started up your podcast, I came back in and started from scratch, and it's led up to now.
Okay, so you have you only seen up to this point then? Have you not seen anything? Well, you said you've seen a bit of the Dave era. Have you seen?
I don't remember much of it, but yeah.
But okay, so mostly you just remember the stuff up to where we've got to.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat as Adam then, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting then.
At this point.
Cool.
Nice.
So did you watch the 2020 special when it came out, or are you saving that to when you get there in your rewatch?
So there was like a documentary thing that they did, didn't there, as well?
They did, yes.
I watched that, I believe, and that kind of inspired me to watch it. And I think I watched The Promised Land. That's what it's called, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think I watched and then I think I saw that, but that relies quite heavily on some lore that has been sort of set up earlier in the show, so I was a bit lost in it, I suppose. I didn't quite get certain aspects.
Yeah. So when you get there next time, you'll be a bit more.
Yeah, I think I'll probably enjoy it more because I thought this is just weird. I'm not quite sure what's happening now.
Cool. Well, today we are looking at Pete's Part 2. A bit odd that we're bringing in a guest just for a Part 2, but it's not the first time we've done this. We had had another Dan, in fact, come on for Part 3 of Back in the Red. So the Red Dwarf Nerd, as he's known as on Twitter and YouTube. He came on for the back in the Red Part 3, and you're coming in for the second part of this. But you have also just watched Part 1. So what did you briefly in like one? What did you think of Part 1? What were your general thoughts of Part 1?
I think it had multiple sort of good lines of humour, and I think that overall I quite enjoyed it. I did think some of it was a bit sort of childish, I suppose, a little bit gutter humour.
Yeah,
but
I think
can't say
that seems to be a theme this season. They seem to be, I don't know, the humour does seem to be going down a slightly more juvenile route this season. That's something I've noticed anyway. I don't know what you think, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think we've said before that throughout Red Dwarf's first 8 series, like, there is the occasional, like you say, Dan, like, gutter style, you know, or like juvenile humour, but it seems like it was always every now and then, or like one per episode. Do you know what I mean? Whereas
so it had an effect.
Yeah, it was more impactful despite it being juvenile because of how rare it occurred, if you like. But in this series, it just seems to be constant, and like you say, Phil, I think it just sort of lessens the impact. I had a few gripes actually with a few jokes in this as we'll go on, but yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, well, in Part 2, I'll read the IMDb description. It says Crichton has accidentally turned Birdman's pet bird Pete into a T-Rex, which has gone on a rampage on board Red Dwarf. With the crew frozen in time, Rimmer, Lister, Brighton, Kachansky, the cat, and Holly attempt to stop Pete and get the time wand back, which Pete has eaten, and restore Pete back to normal before the freeze wears off.
Well, part of that synopsis is a load of rubbish because I think Holly has about one line.
I was thinking exactly.
So he doesn't really help. Like,
as I read that, and I was saying the cat and Holly attempt. Holly, yeah, no,
yeah,
yeah.
He said one thing.
Yeah, I'm missing. Yeah, I was really excited when Holly came back at the beginning of the season, and he's had some good moments, but I think he's been quite underused in this series.
Yeah,
which is a real shame. And he's not really in this one much.
I think in the first episode, I think that they used him fairly well there.
Yeah.
I think that Rat Aster, it was quite funny, and I think sort of went to his humour. But bar that, I think that a lot of it's quite. Joe, previously you said things about how, you know, they were writing for Norman Lovett, so a lot of his lines were, you know, they worked perfectly for his delivery.
Yes.
I think that a lot of the ones he mentions in this one, I think even though they're funny and everything, I don't think that they quite fit his humour style or have as much of a laugh out loud impact.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We do start off sort of. We kind of go back a little bit because we get a recap previously on before the titles. Then we start sort of with the last scene from the last one. So it's kind of like they go back on themselves a little bit with Birdman being eaten again. Poor Birdman. I did like him. He was my favourite character out of the last when I picked my favourite character.
Lovely little Welshman.
Yeah, and then they're trying to get away from the big T-Rex, which I'm torn on whether or not how that looks. It's because like in some shots, I think it looks all right. But then in other shots, like when it bursts through a wall, and the cutout of the wall looks really bad and shoddy.
Yeah. I think the close-ups look better because, I mean, people out there, you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think the close-ups, it looks like more of a practical effect, like an actual animatronic thing, whereas when it's a full body shot, it's very clearly CGI. And like we said in Part 1, like, you know, for 1999 BBC TV budget, is it the worst CGI in the world? No, like I've seen a lot worse from like that time frame, but I just even if they'd have just shown Pete mostly in close-up and then done like one full... Do you know what I mean? I think I would have preferred that because it looks a lot better. I don't know what you thought, Dan, about the effects of this era of the show.
Well, because I'm kind of into how they practically did it. Because, I don't know why, it's just something I'm quite interested in how they achieved it. And so I've written that there's some kind of animatronic there because there's a movement within that neck. So it might have been puppetry or something like that, but that is moving. But they've also... So they've had to do like a model of a dinosaur, but probably just the head. But then at the same time, they've added some weird effects to it. Like, and I can't quite tell what they've done to it. So like it kind of moves at one point, and it's like they had to compensate for the lack of puppetry or the lack of movement on the dinosaur or something like that, because it kind of judders weirdly. It's quite hard to describe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that they kind of were limited by that model. But I mean, the fact that they would attempt it is, I think, due some credit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the show's always been good with like we've discussed before, like model shots, of ships and things like that. So I'm glad that they haven't completely abandoned models yet. Because I think in Series 7, we said, Phil, when that was the season where CGI really started coming in. And I think there's a greater ratio of CG compared to practical model stuff. But in this series, to be fair, with Pete at least, it seems like they're trying to get more of a balance. At least it feels like that anyway.
Yeah, I think, they're using CG where you couldn't achieve what they wanted to achieve with model work, whereas before they were kind of shoving it in even when a model would have done the same thing, possibly better.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree. In their efforts to get away from the T-Rex, Crichton basically sacrifices Scudder Bob.
Yes.
Horrific.
I'm not sure if that was his plan, because he chucks I'm not sure what he was thinking, because he chucks the time wand to Scudder Bob, who is right by the dinosaurs. Like, that's not a good plan. If you want, surely they're both going to get eaten.
I mean, at first I thought it was a plan, like the whole Bob gets eaten. I was like, right, okay, like this is, Crichton's a clever guy. But then when they're all hiding, talking about what the plan is, and Kochanski makes, in the situation, a very viable suggestion about how long it's going to take for the time one to pass through, for want of a better term. But then Crichton's like, oh, I've got no idea, which implies that it wasn't the plan.
Yeah,
so, like you say,
and also
it's just a bit...
I kind of assume, like when they cut to Bob in the dinosaur's stomach, I kind of thought, oh, maybe that was the plan. He's gonna do something from the inside, but no.
Yeah, it's just a bit convoluted, I think. I mean, I don't know what you two thought, but that whole planning scene, I've called it, like when they're hiding behind the door and they're discussing like what they're gonna do, and Rimmer's going like, we're gonna die, or whatever he says. There were some good quips in there, like, but again, my recurring phrase, you'll know, Dan, as you've listened, but it didn't need to be that long. I'm going to go out and just say, no, honestly, I thought that
you
whole...
said it.
Yeah, I mean, that strike one, everyone take a drink. But a little spoiler, it's not going to be the first and only time I say it.
I was going to say, there's multiple times I'm imagining you're going to bring up that it was too long in this episode.
I did the same.
I have that note several times.
Yeah. But I mean, what are you two? This planning scene, do you two agree, or do you think it's like a fine length? I don't know. I just felt by the end of it, I was like, can we just progress now? Can we I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And it does have Holly's only line of the episode in, which I did like, which is that Holly's they asked for what his summary of the situation is.
What's your take on the situation?
What do you want, the long or the short version?
Ooh, long.
You're finished. What's the short version? Bye.
Yes, yeah.
That was good. I like
it. Was, yeah.
But yeah, it did go. It went on too long. The whole plan, and this is where they come up with the plan to make the dinosaur eat some roughage, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. What did you think, Dan?
From that scene, I think that it's kind of like a transition scene, really. And I don't think that the jokes are quite the intention for it to... They're not the best jokes, because the purpose of the scene is not to do a joke. It's to move on to the next, the bit.
Yeah.
But I think that Adam's right. Yeah, that scene goes on a little bit beyond its welcome, because you can kind of see where it's going, I think. That's what it is.
It's too long when I just started looking around at the scenery and actually like sort of zoned out from what was being said. Like I wrote, I've just noticed that Cat's belt says cat. Very obvious, but I like it. But that was only because I sort of zoned out from all this. Because again, like you say, Dan, they were just sort of, I guess, addressing the fact they needed to come up with a plan, but seemingly taking forever to get there with jokes that didn't always quite land. So, yeah.
It's like that idea that when you're writing humor, if you do that, if you're essentially doing a similar joke, you need to up the ante a little bit. There needs to be like, if you're having, Rimmer repeat the same line, there needs to be like an extension on that for it to become funny. Otherwise, you're just repeating the same line 3 times to the same effect. And
they kind of did a little bit with that with the third time, where he kind of goes into a kind of like he's being calm. It's like, oh, okay, can I just say one more? Can I just say one more thing? That does kind of up the ante a little bit, but I do get what you mean. Yeah.
But yeah, you always knew that that's what was going to be the next bit.
Line, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Bob does do something in the stomach with the wand though, but not anything that's helpful because he unfreezes the crew, and the crew recapture the escaped convicts of our protagonists, and they get marched to the captain's office. This two-parters was apparently originally titled Captain's Office, or was it Captain's Office, or was it something? Yeah, it was. Captain's Office. That was the original working title of these 2 episodes. Because if you remember from the first part as well, they repeatedly get marched to the captain's office for doing stuff wrong, and that continues into this episode as well. So, it's continuing that theme, and this is another one where it just went on too long.
Don't even get me started.
Go on. I'm getting you started.
It's just I like Captain Hollister, right? I mean, I think we've said this before. Like, he's been on form for a lot of this season. His jokes are quite good. The way the actor portrays the character is quite good, I think. And it was the same here. Like, the start of the scene, I was like, "Yep, this is more of what I like to see." Like, it's Hollister on form, being like sarcastic, being very dry and stuff like that. But I mean, the whole do you know gag, do you know what happens when, like, the first time it's funny, the second time it's funny, and it's still funny to a degree because, like you say, Dan, in a way, like, he is upping the ante every time. He's adding things on and making it sound worse, and you get a lot of like grim imagery. Again, more of that very gutter juvenile humor, talking about sick and diarrhea and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know, for me personally, and as I always say, comedy's subjective. I'm not saying it's like definitively right or wrong. But for me, if you're going to do that sort of joke and build-up, I'd argue just go straight to the big finale on this one, rather than like consistently repeat it. But that's just me. And I just think go straight to the big finale, tell them to go and sort it out. And that's all I needed for me personally. I mean, what did you two think of this scene? Yeah,
when I mentioned earlier about it being childish, I think I wrote down in my notes that it becomes to the point where I'm like, this isn't, I don't find this very funny because it's just so grim. Silly that I can't imagine it. Those jokes work when you imagine it. And it just felt like they were just throw in some, toilet humor, bit of vomit and stuff like that. And that'll do. That's a joke.
It's fine. It's always had, the show has always had some element of, as we said earlier, some element of this toilet humor and this sort of juvenile humor. It's just so much in this series. It's like they've just gone massively overboard with it. You need a balance of the different type of jokes, and they just have gone too heavily on the juvenile humor this time. And this one just goes on to like you said, Adam. It was like the first time, the second time, funny, and I think he did it 4 times. There was 4 times it added another one. Do you know what happens when? And it's by the end of it, I was like, just get on with it.
Yeah, and I think, like we've said, because the toilet humor in past series was so like every now and then or a lot less common, it was more funny because it wasn't the common style of humor. Like Red Dwarf, as we've said, is quite clever in its humor a lot of the time, but when they just overload it with this toilet, it feels more like CBBC than Red Dwarf. That's not knocking CBBC, but do you know what I mean? Shows like that is like the main focus of comedy, like toilet humor. That's what it felt like.
Oh yeah, I can kind of imagine the type of show that you're thinking of.
Do you know there was that period in like the 2000s when like any sort of kids comedy show, it was literally just like gross out humor all the way through, and that's what we're gonna roll. It kind of felt like that.
And then you've got the scene ends with the again repeated far too many times.
Oh god,
the see you in 10 minutes, where they just repeating with the time wand again and again and again, and like I mean, it wasn't even that funny to start with. I didn't get why they were doing it.
Yeah, I didn't understand that at all.
Like, why were they? I mean, they had the time one. They could have used that to escape. They could have used it for any number of things. But they just repeat him saying, "I'll see you in 10 minutes," again and again. And I don't get why they were doing it in the first place. And they did it so many times. It just so wasn't funny.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were going for, like, he was going to add a minute each time, if you get me. Like, he go, "Oh, see you in 11 minutes." Because then that would make sense why they do it so many times, to, like, give them more time. But, yeah, it just, twice or 3 times would have been enough. But, yeah, I just don't know why they decided to elongate that. It just felt weird by the end of it.
It did, yeah. Yeah. But then we get a scene. Then they're back in the in their prison cell, and we get a scene that did actually make me laugh. So the first time in the episode, really, which is Rimmer insulting the captain when he stood behind him. And now I'm curious to see if you thought this went on too long, because I didn't. I thought it was actually just about the right amount of time. But what do you think?
I'll let you go first, Dan, and then I'll give my thoughts.
I can't say that I thought it went on too long, or maybe that's just because of the previous scene going on for far too long. This was a nice break, but I couldn't say I felt like it was particularly bad. I thought that it was a very simple joke, and maybe because it was simple, it went on too long. But then again, I still thought, that's quite funny, even though it's basic.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that sense that the joke was very straightforward, and I think I would have complained about the length of the scene, but I've got to say what saved it for me was Chris Barrie. Just because obviously we know how good of a performer and comedian he is. He can take you could argue in the hands of, I hate saying it, but the term is, they say, a lesser actor. I hate that term, but you've heard the phrase before.
Yeah.
Like, if someone who could have taken that material and just, if they hadn't embedded it in the same way, I would have probably felt it was too long and a bit flat. But because Chris Barrie properly goes for it, and he is funny, that sort of saved it for me. It wasn't a perfect scene, but I don't have any.
I've had things like, I think I mentioned back in one of the Back in the Red episodes, there's a Holly line like that where I said anybody else it wouldn't have worked, but it works with him. And I think this is the same. It works because of Rimmer's delivery, and even when you know what's going to happen, and he's going to go, he's behind me, isn't he? But the way he just delivers it is. It generally made me laugh out loud, which is the first time that had happened in this episode. 10 minutes in to a comedy series, and that was the first time I laughed out loud. So
yeah, I think that, I mean, Chris Barrie is such an amazing talent, like, of a comedian, because I think that for anything that I've ever tried to make, I've always felt that when I lose a little bit of faith in a joke or a gag or whatever, I kind of reel back a bit, and he doesn't do that. He kind of, I don't know whether he has, I'm sure he has jokes that he's not particularly fond of, but he's still able to deliver them well, so that those that it connects with, it still works for.
For sure.
Well, then we get to a scene. We're gonna have to talk about it. We're gonna have to talk about the penis in the room.
Yes. Very good.
Archie Crichton's escaped penis.
I mean, when he said it, like, "Oh, that's my penis," I did laugh, but only because that was the very last thing I was expecting to come out of his mouth.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Apparently, according to the IMDb trivia section, so take it with a grain of salt. Don't know where anybody can edit this. But apparently these scenes, every scene regarding regarding Archie, were filmed for the Cassandra episode, which I'm guessing they got cut for time, but then they must have liked them so much that they wanted to put them somewhere, so they put them here.
Penis joke funny.
Right.
Must use. We must use penis joke.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, look,
that kind of makes sense, to be honest, in my mind, because it does feel a bit out of
it gets out of nowhere, doesn't it? It's like very odd. Yeah, very odd placing that it comes up here and then comes up in one scene later when it's in Kat's clothes, and that's kind of it. Just kind of randomly out of nowhere. And I think that's what makes it even more strange, because it's not in an episode where they're discussing. I mean, in a way, it's good that they are continuing a narrative thread with the whole Crichton being assigned to be in the women's prison rather than the male prison. That's something that they've had going throughout the series, and we didn't get much of that kind of like in previous series, developing storylines. I'd say developing, but continuing storylines. So yeah, I'll give it credit for that, but it's a bit weird.
It is weird, but I can't help but find it funny. Like, there's just something, as we're talking about it now, I'm smiling.
Yeah.
Just because of how, like, maybe because of how bizarre it is, or how they thought, this is a good joke. We've really nailed it here. This is high class. This is going to get us that BAFTA kind of thing. But, I just thought that it was, maybe because, like you said, Adam, it's a bit out of a bit of surprise when he says that that's his thing. Yeah. But I think that, and the line that Kochanski says to him,
Crichton, do you realise what this means?
No, ma'am.
It means you're a real man.
It does? Why?
Because now, like all men, you have absolutely no control over your penis.
And I thought that was a good joke, because I think Kochanski's she's an opportunity that I don't think the writers use very much, because you can really inject it's quite a male oriented show, because of, look at some of the storylines. But I think that Kochanski can add that second perspective and give a kind of more female side, or female humour, I suppose, in terms of relativity. And I thought that joke that she says, and her delivery of it was quite good.
I agree with you. I mean, it was nice to see her get a really strong joke like that, and that joke did make me laugh, because and you're quite right. I think male dwarf, that's not the name of the show. Red Dwarf is, as you say, quite a male orientated show. And I think we said it was earlier in this series or the last series that, when this Kochanski gets introduced in series 7, she's presented as this very, strong-willed, very independent, progressive woman. And then there's points later on, I think it was in this series, where the writers seemingly ignore that for a time and write her as quite the opposite in some scenes, which feels very weird. So it's nice that she's got good one-liners like that, and it's also nice to have Crichton and Kochanski scenes that are genuinely funny, because they spent a lot of their time in series 7 bickering, which did serve the story at the time. But I know, Phil, after a while, me and you said we got a bit sick of when it was just those two, of them just doing that, and because it was
funny
else.
at first, but then it just didn't change, and it was the same every episode.
It was the same thing, So it's nice that they've got scenes together that are genuinely funny, and that where they are bickering in a way, but they're not bickering about the Lister thing. Do you know what I mean? So I like that.
Yeah, there were bits of this I liked, and like when they then are out on the Canaries, because the Canaries get sent to deal with the Dinosaur. Don't know why I said it like that. Dinosaur. The Dinosaur. And as I alluded to earlier, Archie ends up in the cat's clothing somehow, so it's wriggling. You can see he's writhing on the floor, and it's kind of wriggling in his shirt and stuff. And I did really like the line.
Don't be alarmed, sir. It's just my penis is on the loose.
I wrote it down in my notes as penis mouse for some reason, just to remind myself.
Fairly accurate description, to be fair. So.
Yeah. I think it's okay. It just feels a bit out of place in the episode, but I think there's some funny bits in there.
I think that in an episode that's taken a little bit more seriously, with a little bit of childish humour or something like that, I think could have gone a long way into to make it funny, I suppose. But with this episode being very silly, very cartoonish, and very childish anyway, having another plot, or a subplot rather, that is even more childish than the previous one makes it feel a bit out of place and falls into the background a bit as well, I think.
On this mission anyway, the Canaries are sent out, and Kill Crazy and I've forgotten his name, the other one.
I was literally about to say
the other one that is an actor that has been the other one that has been an actor that has been in EastEnders.
Big up Max Branning.
Max Branning, and I can't even remember the other guy's EastEnders character. The other one. The other one. They both kind of betray the Lister and Rimmer and that lot, and they try and steal the wand. Well, they do steal the wand and try and beat up Lister and Rimmer, but nothing's having any effect on them. They're just punching them. They're like trying to lift them and throw them, and nothing's happening. Because some of the time they've hit a button on the time wand trying to do something, and what they've actually done is I can't remember how Crichton describes it, but something like he's put their timelines out of sync or something.
Yeah.
He's phased them like a second ahead or something.
Yeah.
I imagine something like that.
Yeah. Can I just when they betray them? I might have missed it in their dialogue, but like, remind me, why are they betraying them? Like, what's the motive behind it?
I assume they just want the time wand to be able to, I don't know, either escape or, do their own things with it for their own benefit. But I either missed that or it wasn't there too.
Yeah, I didn't want to jump too much ahead, but I think that this whole like betrayal and everything that happens with them is very odd within the episode.
Yeah.
I think that they devote so little time to it that it's not really worth having.
It's a bit out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But I suppose it does track with the two characters, the Kill Crazy and the other one.
Yeah.
I guess so, but we, like you say, Dan, we couldn't have more time to set up this, but we had to have the "see you in 10 minutes" gag over and over again. That was clearly so important to the plot. But yeah, but that's what I mean though. It's like when it happened, I was literally like, oh right, okay, like this is happening now, and now they're gorillas because know.
That was the thing that I was thinking about. Sorry to interrupt you, but.
No.
The we never see them do that. And the first time, so I kind of watched this twice because I watched it last night quite late, wrote my notes, and then watched it again just to make sure that I understood the plot and everything. And when I watched it today, I was like, this doesn't quite pan. If you look at the story as a whole, the fact that these boys get turned into apes or gorillas doesn't work with how the story works. They just kind of turn around and just go, oh no, here was the problem we had, but it's okay, it sorted itself out.
Yeah.
They've removed themselves from the equation. It's
kind of all dealt with off screen, and I know what you mean. It does feel like, oh, that's very convenient. I mean, it does make sense with the with the characters.
Yeah.
They're very, they can't work out how to work it. It makes sense that they would do something stupid that would end up hurting themselves. But I do know what you mean. It could have maybe had some more time maybe we could have seen that happen, or I don't know, something a bit more possibly.
It doesn't seem to work in the fact, maybe because I was thinking maybe there's something that I've missed in my head from the scene in between, or the scenes in between rather, where they're doing something, the one would have been useful or whatever, and they don't have it, so that's why they took it away from them. The writers. But it doesn't seem to quite work that way, and they just go, oh, we need that one thing. Ah, there it is. We'll just take that and carry on with the rest of the episode. I mean, I think it's almost like it's a joke, but it's a sort of like slightly hidden joke.
Yeah.
It's a kind of like, if you watch it again, you'll see this little bit where and I was like, oh right, they've turned themselves into apes. That is quite humorous, but we never see it.
Yeah, for sure. And but just to backtrack by a scene, when they do go to the captain's office again, the delayed time stream beat. I did find that quite funny.
Yes,
it's like Chris Barrie and
because they're getting beaten up. Because of the beating they got earlier that didn't affect them, it's now affecting. Yeah.
Yeah, I just found that whole delay thing and how they're like throwing themselves around and the face. Like, I thought that was just done really well. So yeah, a captain's office scene this episode that I did like and that I didn't think was too long. So that's a plus.
I especially like that they've just got like plasters across their face.
Yes,
for the rest of the episode, from the beatings and stuff that they've taken. But no, that scene with them getting beaten up is quite cool. I like the shot in particular where they're sort of like pushed against the wall, and the camera follows them. I thought that was a lovely shot. And, they don't really need to go to that effort.
That was used in the title sequence as well, wasn't it?
I did wonder how that fitted in.
But they get the wand back and they start basically hit Control Z on everything.
Yes,
start undoing things, including bringing Birdman back, which I was very happy about because I like Birdman. Like the good old Welsh Birdman. And but then Rimmer insists on destroying the time wand.
Yes.
But after they destroy it, they realize there's an egg. The dinosaur's laid an egg. So they've turned it back into a bird, so that's fine. Then they destroy it, and then they realize there's an egg, but they don't have the time wand anymore. And the egg hatches, and they runs away, and there's another chase, but it's them trying to chase it into an elevator and stuff. I did quite find it funny when it then goes into the room where the captain is in the process of having a massage, and his masseur has gone off, and so he's face down on the massage table, and the dinosaur starts licking him, I think, and he thinks it's the masseuse. So that was funny.
However, they designed that, because I think that the baby dinosaur was very clearly not CGI the whole way through, which I thought was a great choice. I'll always, I think, favour practical effects over CGI personally. But
I mean, in this era, definitely, I think.
Oh no, I meant just in general. Any film, TV, I just prefer practical. I don't know what it is. I think you can have great CG, but I always like seeing something that was actually there when it was filmed.
Touch it in that respect.
Yeah,
it feels much realer, and
I think now, like if we're talking now, I would say that it depends on the situation, and I prefer. Actually, I think where they use a mix is good. Where they use model work and enhance it with CG is often probably the best way. In modern stuff, but we're getting sidetracked.
I mean, I was gonna go. That shot from Spider-Man where they've CG'd him into a city and all this kind of stuff, and nobody batted an eyelid, and then no one noticed, and even though that was all CG, no one cared, and we're complaining about little ships flying around and how that looks strange, and now with the technology that we have nowadays. But I would see it as the style less than the limits. It was like the intentional decision to make it look like that, because in universe that's how things should look. If that makes like. I that's kind of how I look back on things like older Doctor Who, because I base it off that. But you tried to shut down the tangent, and I brought the tangent back up again.
No, you go for it.
Yeah, but because if you look at even the Dave stuff, maybe because they were trying to do it on the cheap, but that follows the same sort of look. Maybe trying to make it look cheap ended up being more expensive, or something like that, because they'd have to create more, I suppose. But I think that as a whole, it becomes more of a style thing than a limitation for me. And that that dinosaur with the little legs in the egg, I thought that was a really good bit of work for that. Essentially, just that one shot, that hardly anything really, and they still because you can hire them, can't you? Things like that. Maybe they hired it from a different prop store or something like that. Or built it themselves. But I think that was such a cool thing for them to do. And I think I found it funny, even though it wasn't really supposed to be funny.
Yeah. I mean, the egg running around with two little legs sticking out was funny, and that's it. It reminded me of something. I'm sure there was a character, maybe it was a cartoon. Was it one of the Looney Tunes cartoons that used to have an egg, like it was a chicken egg or something, but it was just like it had two legs sticking out, and that was the character.
I've got an image in my head, because when I watched it, I thought that I recognised it somewhere, but I could not figure out where. I don't know why, but I thought to like Ragdolls or something, but Ragdolls? That doesn't sound right.
I think it's a Looney Tunes character or similar, something like that. I'm pretty sure it's a cartoon. But anyway, that's what it reminded me of, and I did think that was funny. And then we get the final scene, which is kind of in the captain's office again. The final captain's office scene, and he's suffering from a bit of PTSD. He's gone mute, and he's just holding up cards saying what he's telling them. And he's taking himself. He says something about the hole, which is where they were sent last time, part of the prison, for 12 months. And then reveals that he's going to the hole for 12 months to recover. I don't know who's going to run the ship for the next 12 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did like the title cards thing, though. It did make me laugh. And I think, again, it's a testament to the actor playing Captain Hollister, because obviously his facial expressions and body language whilst doing it, I think, really helped add to it as well. So, I quite like the ending in terms of, because sometimes, and I mean, if you've heard the show, Dan, so you'll probably know, but I know sometimes we think sometimes they end on a joke that we might find a bit flat, or an ending that just happens and that's it. But I don't know, I didn't mind this one. I quite liked it. I don't know what you thought.
Well, I thought that for me, I think that it was a little bit flat. Because I felt like practically, so I liked the whole card thing, but the fact that he'd want to go in the hole instead of that. So are they going to become like the captains of the ship next week? Like, what does this? Oh, that's the end of the episode, right? Okay, but
yeah.
I did see there's a fan theory that like the next episode must therefore take place at least 12 months later, because he said he's going. That's if you take him at his word here that he's going to go and live in the hole for 12 months to get away from everybody. The next episode must be therefore 12 months later. We'll see what we think about that next week. But I don't know.
It's a little bit odd, isn't it? It's. I feel like there's a more natural way to end the episode. Well, I can't think of it myself, but I feel like they could have worked on a different way to end the episode that would have summarized it a little bit more than. Maybe I don't. I think, like Adam said, I don't think it's the worst ending we've got. We've had some episodes which have gone like, oh, that's it. That's how you're ending it. but this one kind of felt like it. Oh, it did. It had been wrapped up at least. And the joke wasn't too bad, and
I guess we haven't had a resolution to Pete Jr. Now
that's
that I'm
a good
thinking
point.
about it.
No, we haven't.
Because
where is that little dino?
Because they don't say like they destroyed it or anything. Like he's just saying, "Oh, I've got PTSD." But so I don't know. Next week, I don't know if he's going to pop up or if it's going to be one of those Red Dwarf things where we've established this and now we're never going to talk about it again, and you shouldn't think about it
until like
as this show tends
10
to do.
years later.
Until 10 years later when we just bring it up.
They mention like that there's a dinosaur roaming around the lower decks that they never dealt with.
I can imagine them doing that.
They probably would. They may have done already. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, when this finished, though, I thought, if I had to summarize this, I thought, as a part 2, I found it a little disappointing. The stakes didn't really, like, in terms of Pete and the threat and stuff, I thought it could have been made even the stakes even greater. Because we only see, like you say, we only see Pete in the lower decks. It never feels like he's threatening the whole ship or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? It just feels like a very subdued threat. And then also, I feel like this, if this was the story they were going to tell, I feel like this didn't need to be 2 half-an-hour episodes. I feel like maybe this could have been one like 1 45-minute episode maybe. Because as we've said, I just think there's too many scenes in both parts that just either feel like they're there for the sake of being there, and sometimes they're funny, like to a degree, like the Archie scene, as we said, but then sometimes they're not. And I don't know. I just don't think if this is the story they were going to tell, I don't think it needed to be 2 parts like this. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, it's a similar thing with Back in the Red, wasn't it? Where that could have been a hour-long episode or a 2-parter maybe, because they had so much in there. I mean, they had a whole like previously on section which was like 4 minutes long in one of those. So it was I think that's a thing this season. There's a lot of padding this season as well. Which is a bit of a shame.
What do you think, Dan? What's your summary of the Pete saga?
So I think that just like the Back in the Red 3-parter, the structure of a 2-parter within Red Dwarf just doesn't work very well, because I think that the show is best when it can do a 30 minutes of humour and it can kind of call back at the end, and I think that it ties it up nicely that way. With this one, I think they tried to do both. They tried to tie it up in some respects, because they had the whole basketball thing at the start of the first part. So, that could have been an episode, I suppose, by itself, but probably wasn't strong enough to hold it, so they shoved it in there. And then so that's kind of like its own separate thing in part 1, and then part 2 is the dinosaur on the loose, and I think that just overall the structure of it doesn't quite function. My favourite episode so far has been, I think, probably Cassandra, because I think it worked. I think its premise was a lot better. Even though I like the whole time dilation stuff and how, you can sort of de-evolve things or evolve things to different points in its timeline, like people become apes and, birds become dinosaurs, which I think is loosely what happened in a very loose way. But I think that it just needs that little thing that just ties it up, that just finishes it off nicely. And I don't think that it quite had that. It was more the fact that they thought, right, we're going to do this two-parter. We're going to make it, we're going to have a dinosaur. It's going to be an epic, and then we're going to just wipe it out with essentially an undo button, and all the consequences, consequences are light in Red Dwarf anyway, but to quite literally stand there and just press the button to remove the plot of the episode, I thought that cannot have been, that's not narratively the best idea. I don't know what you guys thought to that, because it was a bit of a kind of a conclusion I reached in a state of rage. Then it was a case of just sitting there thinking, so you've done all this and that never happened.
Yeah, I didn't mind the undo button thing so much. That kind of fitted with how the wand seemed to have established to work. It's fairly loose. You can undo things, you can redo things, and given how the dinosaur was created, it's kind of how I imagined that they would just turn it. I imagined they would just turn it back into the bird from the moment they turned it into a dinosaur. So that didn't bother me at all. So I don't know. Maybe.
It's a bit of an odd thing, because from Red Dwarf, that's like the perfect thing that they always do. They always kind of go, in the last minute or so, we'll just wrap this up quickly, and job done. So I suppose I can't be mad at it for that. But I just felt like if you're going to devote an hour to something, it should have a conclusion that has some weight to it, or as much weight as Red Dwarf can give it.
Yeah. Oh, fair enough. We've got that's it. That's Pete's part 2. That's where it ends. So we have some regular features on the show where we talk about our favourites of the episode, our favourite characters, our funniest moment, and we give it a ranking out of 10, a scutter score out of 10 scutters. So, Dan, who was your, out of the whole episode, it can be for any reason whatsoever. It doesn't have to be because they were the funniest. It could be because they had the most story that touched you. It could just be because they pulled a funny face you really liked. Whatever. Yeah. Who was your favourite character in the episode?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I've chosen the captain character, because one, I don't feel like he gets enough love as a favourite character within the stories, but mostly because of the delivery by the actor that plays him, and the fact that he's actually been given some time to, because I think he's in the first series, if not the second as well.
Yeah.
But I love the idea that he's here and he's that kind of straight man. He's the butt of the jokes and all this kind of stuff. I like that element, so I went with him. I think the face at the end of the episode as well, when he's grinning at them, is staying with me quite a lot in my mind. So cool. I have to give it to him.
What about you, Adam?
Yeah. I'm giving it to Captain Hollister as well. Pretty much for like all the reasons Dan just said, like the way, the facial expressions, just the general performance. I've loved Captain Hollister this series, so yeah, happy to give it to him. What about you, Phil? Are you making it a hat trick, or are you?
Well, you know what, I might actually, because I actually still had this blank, because I was thinking I can't really think of anybody in this episode that really stood out to me. But you guys, in your eloquent descriptions there, have convinced me that actually, even though I think some of the writing for him in this episode, like we were talking about scenes going on too long and stuff, what he did with what he had, there was some good stuff in there, and like say good facial expressions, good delivery and all that. So yeah, I'll give it to Captain Hollister as well. Why not?
Lovely.
What about funniest moments, Dan?
Okay, mine's something we actually haven't talked about, because it's quite a subtle joke. But there's a joke in which they go into the captain's office and Rimmer does his salute, as you noticed, and as he always does, and it goes on slightly too long, and then finishes, and then Lister just puts his hand up and waves, and I just felt that
nice.
joke was good. Was just made me laugh each time I saw it. I think it's done maybe 3 times throughout the entire two-parters.
I think so.
Two-parter, but yeah, I quite enjoyed that joke, so I'm gonna give it to that one.
I'd never
It did
noticed his
make me
little
laugh the
wave.
most.
I'm gonna have to look out for that now. That sounds like a great one. Adam?
Mine's one we have talked about, just because it did make me laugh, and it was a great line for the character. It's Kachansky's line that you're a real man now because you're not in control of your penis. It just it got me. So I mean
agree.
the audience clapped. I didn't clap, but I was with them in the.
That's fair enough.
I was with them in. We've said before, sometimes we hear the audience clap and we're like, was that a clap-worthy moment? I'd agree that this was probably one. So, yeah, that's my funniest moment.
Fair
what
enough.
about you, Phil?
I'm also going not with the same moment, but also with one of the Archie moments. And it's Crichton's line about, "Don't be alarmed, my penis is on the loose," or whatever he says.
Yeah.
Don't be alarmed, it's just my penis on the loose.
No fear.
Just again, it's Robert Llewellyn is great with delivery of lines all the time, really. So that was just another great delivery. I mean, I think it was slim pickings in this episode, to be fair. But that I only had 2 things marked as possibilities, and that was one of them. So I'm going to give it to that. What about marks out of 10? Dan, how many scutters out of 10 are you giving this episode?
I'm going to go with 5 scutters, I think. Okay. I initially wrote 6, but then I thought I'm just going to put it down a bit because I think that some of the jokes, I think, long and don't need to be there. And I think it could have been devoted to more interesting things. Like, I'm a big fan of the science elements and including that within Red Dwarf. And I like it when they do that kind of stuff. And this one's very, very, very loose. That one doesn't quite fit. But yeah, I give it a 5 because I think that it just there's plenty of jokes that I like and plot lines I suppose that I like, but I think that overall the thing kind of just sort of doesn't quite impress me enough to say that it's a 7 or an 8 or anything like that.
Okay, Adam.
Yeah, that's valid. I'm going to give it a 5 as well, just because, for all the reasons we said, a lot of scenes and jokes that, quite frankly, just gone far too long, don't need to be there, just aren't funny. Again, subjective opinion, but I just don't think are funny. The fact that the Pete story, now that I've seen it, just feels a little underwhelming, I guess.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like we said, we don't get the reveal of Pete, even as a Sparrow, till the end of part 1. Which is fine, but then I think part 2 doesn't go far enough with it. As I said, I thought the stakes could have been a lot greater. Even in a comedic way, I think the stakes could have been a lot greater. Not that there were some good moments, like we said, we've talked about some good stuff, but yeah, just a bit disappointed.
Is that your lowest score?
No, I want to say I gave Crikey TV lower.
Did you? Okay.
I'd have to listen back. 4.5. I think I might have given it just a 4 because I think at the time when we did it a few weeks back, I think both of us said, I can't remember if it was both of us. I think I said at least it was my worst one,
probably,
if not maybe tying with Body Swap. I can't remember.
We've had a bit of a recording break of a month where we haven't recorded any episodes, so we're struggling to remember even like a few episodes ago now.
But it's one of my lowest scores for definite. Yeah, I don't often give a 5 or below.
No, that's fair enough. I'm also low, not quite as low as you guys. I've given it a 6. It was a disappointment from part 1. I quite enjoyed part 1. I think I can't remember what I gave part 1 a month ago when we recorded it, but I think I liked more of that than I did of this. This episode felt like it dragged in too many places that I was bored through some of it. So
it does feel like it's the last little. It's like the last 10 minutes, I suppose, that's been stretched a little bit.
But there we go. So not a overall great score for Pete Part 2. What did you think of it at home? Let us know in the comments below on YouTube if you're watching or listening to this on YouTube. Or, if you're listening on one of the other podcast platforms, then you can always tweet us at AllDeadDavePod and tell us what you thought of it. So do that too.
Please do.
Where can people find you and your YouTube and your Twitter and stuff on the internet? How do people find you?
So my name is Dan Johnson on YouTube. On Twitter, it's DAGStudios6. There's a picture of my face there. I think I'm sort of like scratching my beard or something, like that. And then I've got a TikTok, which is just Dan_Johnson.
Oh, what do you do on your TikTok?
I should really post on there more often, but I post just sort of like, dare I say, jokes that come to me, but just thoughts that come to me that I don't feel like I could do a video on, because they just wouldn't be, worth the time, or be worth the length. They'd only be about a minute long. So I just kind of share opinions and stuff like that, and I quite enjoy doing it. To be fair, it's a nice little break, I suppose.
Nice.
From time to time.
Nice. I keep thinking maybe I should start a TikTok, and then I'm like, that's a young man's game. I'm too old for TikTok now. There we go. Adam, what about you? Where can people find you?
For me, you can find me on YouTube, Adam Martyn with a Y. I do all sorts, really. Been doing a lot of documentary style stuff recently.
Really been loving your documentary style stuff. You've been sort of moving on to. It's really good. History of TV and stuff. It's been really good.
Yeah, I like a lot of TV history and stuff. So there'll be more of that stuff coming. And I want to try documentaries on other subjects I like as well. So yeah, you can check out for that. There's also Doctor Who stuff on there. If you go back through, look on the playlist, there's lots of Doctor Who content as well if you're into that. And just on Twitter, if you'd like, give me a follow. It's at Adam Martyn AMTV for all my daily ramblings. But yeah, and what about you, Phil?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, which is just my name at the moment, Philip Hawkins. And on there, it's been a bit quiet recently because I've had a broken laptop, so I haven't been making any videos because I haven't been able to edit them. So for the last month, there's barely been any videos. But I'm gonna start ramping up the production again now. So hopefully by the time this comes out, there'll be some more recent videos on there. And it's things like Doctor Who, the MCU, Star Trek, any geeky pop culture that I like. I tend to make videos about, so check that out as well. And this podcast goes up there, of course. So you can see cartoon versions, not moving cuts, just like still cartoon versions of me and Adam on the screen with a little squiggly line to go along with your podcast listening, if you so desire.
That's right.
That's where you can find me. And on Twitter, I'm at Culture Filter, but filter is PHILTER, because my name's Phil. I like a little bit of wordplay like that.
We like wordplay, yeah.
So do check that out as well. Well, that's the end. Thank you for joining us, Dan. It's lovely to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been like listening to a podcast while it's live. It's been very odd. There's moments I've just sat back and just gone, this isn't a recording. This is actually happening.
I have to actually contribute to this. Hold on. I've got to say stuff. Yeah. Well, it's been great having you on. Me and Adam will be back next week to review the finale of season 8. So that'll be exciting. And then we're going to have some specials after that. We're going to do a Q&A. Yeah. So if you've got any questions for the Q&A, leave them in the comments below or on send them to our Twitter account. We're going to do a ranking. We're going to rank all the episodes without looking back at our scores. So, and then we're going to compare them to our scores and see if they come out the same or not.
That's
they probably won't. Foreshadowing it now.
We've been recording this podcast for over a year now, haven't we? So, those early ones are quite distant in the memory now, but.
Yes.
But there we go. Refresh. So, and we'll have some other specials before we then move on to Back to Earth. So. Do look forward to all of that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.